The message that blew up my whole life arrived while I was chewing cold potatoes at my mother-in-law's table. During lunch with my in-laws, my phone buzzed once against my leg. I glanced down, more from habit than curiosity, and saw an unknown number on the screen. One line of text sat there like a knife point against my ribs. Don't react. They're recording you. I kept my face exactly the same. I even nodded along as my mother-in-law went on about some neighbor's divorce like nothing in the world was wrong. My fingers tightened around the fork so hard my knuckles went white under the table. The room felt too bright. The sound of forks and knives scraping plates drowned out any real talk. My mother-in-law, Carol, smiled wider than usual, the fake kind that never touched her eyes. My brother-in-law stared at his food like it might answer a question for him. My husband, Josh, just ate. Calm, steady, relaxed. Like this was any other Sunday. I am Emily Parker, 34 years old, a literature teacher who spends her days teaching teenagers how to read subtext. That afternoon, every cell in my body screamed that I had become the text. They're recording you. I swallowed, forced my shoulders to stay loose, and made myself look around like I was simply stretching my neck. A picture frame on the far wall was tilted a little, just enough to draw the eye. One outlet cover was crooked, like someone had taken it off recently and put it back in a hurry. There was a new little decorative box on the sideboard I had never seen before. I told myself not to be dramatic. Then I remembered everything Carol had already said about me in this house. Some people only marry to escape their own lives. Not from a decent family. Lucky my son has such a generous heart. I had sat through every jab with a polite smile, topping off wine glasses, clearing plates, pretending it did not cut. Josh always stayed quiet, stuck between us like a statue. Now I had a stranger warning me that someone here was filming me on purpose. I scrolled up under the table, looking for any earlier messages from that number. Nothing. Just that one line. No name, no emoji, no second text. Whoever sent it either wanted to protect me or wanted to see how I would react. I did what I teach my students to do with a tense scene in a book. I observed. Carol laughed too loud at something small. Her eyes kept flicking toward the corner where that tilted frame hung. My brother-in-law shifted in his seat whenever I moved my hands. Josh did not look at me once. Not really. He looked past me, over me, like I had become a piece of furniture. If there was a camera in this room, what did they want from it? A scream. A breakdown. One sharp sentence they could cut and twist. I decided they were not getting any of that. I finished my food in silence, answered questions with short, simple phrases, and pretended I did not feel like I was drowning. Inside, something cold started to form. Not fear. Not yet. Something closer to focus. When dessert ended and Josh finally drove us home, the message still burned in my pocket. In the car, he asked if I was tired. I said I had a headache. That was not a lie. That night, he fell asleep fast, like always. He snored with the heavy breath of someone who either has no secrets or has carried them so long they turned into background noise. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the glow of the alarm clock painting the room in weak red numbers. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed. Josh's home office was at the end of the hall. He worked at a law firm and liked to brag about how secure their systems were, how careful he was with client data. I turned the knob slowly, praying it would not creak, and eased the door open. The computer on his desk was still on, the monitor casting a pale light across the room. He must have forgotten to shut it down. Or maybe he thought I would never touch it. I sat down and moved the mouse. The screen woke up from sleep. No password prompt. My heart slammed against my ribs. A folder on the desktop caught my eye. It was named EP_backup. My initials. For a second, I thought it might be something sweet. Photos of trips, maybe. Old files he wanted to save. Then I saw the date stamps, and the way my stomach instinctively nodded told me the truth before my brain did. I opened the folder. Dozens of video files lined up in neat rows. Each one had a date, a time, and a short label. Kitchen_0713. Hall_0701. Bedroom_0628. Bath_0625. My fingers went numb. I clicked the first one. Grainy footage filled the screen. The kitchen. Our kitchen. I watched myself walk in wearing leggings and an old t-shirt, hair tied up, humming under my breath as I made coffee. The angle came from high up, near the cabinet where the emergency flashlight used to sit before Josh moved clutter last month. I watched another file. The living room this time. Me pacing with the phone pressed to my ear, voice shaking as I talked to my therapist. I heard my own words come through the speakers. I said I felt like someone was watching me. The irony almost made me sick. My hand shook as I went from file to file. There were recordings from the bathroom, the bedroom, the hallway outside my son Noah's room. Me brushing my teeth. Me crying quietly on the floor beside the bed. Me arguing in a whisper with Josh with the door half closed, thinking at least our fights were private. They were not private. None of it was. At first it seemed like raw footage. Then I noticed tiny jumps. Clothes that did not match the day. A phrase from one night spliced into another. I recognized the sweater I wore weeks after that first talk with my therapist showing up on a video labeled with an earlier date. Someone had been cutting and rearranging pieces of my life. Building a story where I looked unstable, hysterical, dangerous. I stopped breathing for a moment. Then the teacher part of my brain, the part trained to handle evidence and timelines, kicked in. I plugged an external drive into the computer and started copying the whole folder. Every file. Every second. My only thought was simple and sharp. If they wanted to use this against me, I would get there first. The progress bar crawled across the screen. In the hallway, the floorboard outside the office door creaked, soft but clear. Someone was awake. And they were walking toward me. I stared at the glowing screen at my half-copied life, and for the first time that day I felt real fear wrap its hand around my throat. The floor creaked just once, but that sound shot through me like an electric current. I froze, staring at the progress bar crawling across the screen. 52%. I couldn't risk it. I shut the window, yanked the flash drive out, and opened an old-school email to make it look like I was grading papers. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it. The door eased open. Josh stood there, hair messy, eyes half-lidded with sleep. He blinked, confused. "You still up? Grading again?" I kept my tone flat. "Couldn't sleep. Just trying to catch up." He nodded, gave me a small tired smile, then left. The door clicked shut. I waited for his footsteps to fade before I exhaled. I didn't restart the copy. I couldn't. I slid the drive into the pocket of my hoodie and turned the computer off completely. For a long time, I sat there in the dark, my hands gripping the fabric of my hoodie until my knuckles ached. Back in bed, Josh was already snoring. The sound felt heavier now, not comforting, not normal. Like a machine running behind a locked door. I lay still and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing through every camera, every wire, every tiny object that suddenly felt suspicious. By sunrise, I hadn't slept a minute. I made breakfast like nothing was wrong. Noah ate his cereal and told me about a project at school while Josh scrolled on his phone. He barely looked up when I kissed Noah's head and said I'd see him later. As soon as they left, I grabbed my bag and the drive and walked out too. The first stop was the school where I worked. I asked the principal for a meeting. He looked startled when he saw my face. I must have looked like I hadn't slept in days. I told him I needed medical leave. "Stress," I said. "Anxiety." It wasn't a lie. He hesitated, asked if I was okay. I told him I just needed time. He signed the papers, and I left. The next stop was the library. I chose a corner table on the second floor, away from everyone. The lights buzzed faintly above my head. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and opened the first file. I watched myself move through my own house. In the kitchen. In the living room. Folding laundry. Crying. Talking on the phone. Every angle was covered. Every space invaded. I clicked another file. The bathroom. My hand flew to my mouth. I stopped it after 3 seconds. I couldn't watch more. Then I opened one labeled Noah Room 0619. My son was sitting on his bed, holding a toy car. Carol sat beside him, stroking his hair. Her voice was calm, almost tender. "Soon your mommy's going to leave. Then you and daddy will have the house all to yourselves." Noah looked up at her, confused. "Why would mommy leave?" Carol smiled the kind of smile that always made my skin crawl. "Because she's not well, sweetheart." Sometimes grown-ups need to go away so everyone else can be happy again. I stopped the video. My hands were trembling, but my eyes were dry. That was it. The moment fear turned into rage. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to erase me from my own son's mind. I packed everything up and left the library. My next stop was a small law firm downtown. The sign outside said Family Law and Digital Evidence. I didn't have an appointment, but I didn't care. A woman in her 40s, Jenna Clark, met me in her office. She listened while I told her everything: the message, the videos, the hidden cameras, Carol's manipulation. When I finished, she said nothing for a few minutes. Then she asked for the drive. She plugged it in, watched a few files, and sighed. You understand what you're sitting on, right? This isn't just invasion of privacy. This is a documented case of surveillance, emotional abuse, and attempted alienation. I asked her what to do. She said we'd start quietly. Back up everything again. File for a restraining order against Carol. Request an immediate forensic inspection of the house. And under no circumstance should I tell Josh what I'd found. I left the office with the paperwork already in motion. For the first time in days, I felt steady. That night I came home calm, cooked dinner, helped Noah with his homework, and didn't let anything show. I even laughed at Josh's small jokes. When he asked if I was okay, I said I was tired but fine. After Noah went to bed, Josh went to his office for a bit. I sat on the couch pretending to scroll through my phone, but really, I was watching him through the reflection in the TV screen. The way he checked drawers, the way he kept glancing toward the hall camera. He was looking for something. He already sensed I knew. I went to bed early. The drive was hidden inside a stack of lesson plans. The extra copies were stored online in an account only I could access. 2 days later, Jenna called. The judge had approved the emergency motion. Carol was officially barred from seeing or contacting Noah. I cried quietly in my car when I heard that. Not from sadness. From relief. The next evening, just as I finished dinner, the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw Carol standing on the porch, red-faced, hair wild, eyes burning. She pounded on the door, yelling, "What did you do, you ungrateful brat? You think you can take my grandson from me?" Noah stood behind me, frozen. I opened the door only a few inches. My voice stayed calm. "You can't be here, Carol. There's a court order." Her face twisted, rage spilling out in every word. She screamed threats, insults, things that made Noah flinch. I closed the door slowly and turned the lock. For a long moment, she kept pounding. Then silence. Then the sound of her car engine starting and fading away down the street. I looked at Noah. He was shaking. I pulled him close and held him until he stopped trembling. I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of what she'd do next. But this time, I wasn't going to hide or cry. I was going to fight. The next morning, the world felt quieter, but not peaceful. That kind of silence hides the next move. I walked outside to take Noah to school, still thinking about Carol's screaming fit the night before when I saw it. My car was covered in white paint. Thick strokes across the doors, letters big enough for the whole neighborhood to see. Crazy. Monster. Bad mom. Noah stopped next to me, staring at the mess. His little hand slipped into mine. "Mom, who did this?" I knelt down, forcing my voice to stay even. "Someone really sad, honey. That's all." Someone sad. Inside, I was burning. I knew exactly who had done it. After dropping Noah off, I called the police. They came, took photos, wrote down my statement, and said what I already expected to hear. Without footage or witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. I nodded, thanked them, and shut the door. What they didn't know was that I had a tiny hidden camera facing the driveway, one I'd installed the same day I learned about the others in my house. That night, I checked the recording. There she was. Carol, in a black coat, crouched beside my car, painting the words with deliberate, angry strokes. I forwarded the footage to Jenna. She called me back within the hour. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the satisfaction in it. Now we have her. We added the footage to the case and filed for a restraining order. Within a few days, it was approved. Carol was officially barred from approaching me or the house. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. But the calm didn't last long. Noah started waking up crying, asking if Grandma hated him. I said no, though it was a lie. I couldn't tell him the truth. He was too young to understand betrayal. On Sunday, during lunch, Josh slammed his fork down so hard it rattled the table. "You're tearing my family apart, Emily." I didn't look up. I just kept eating. His tone told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't angry because his mother had crossed the line. He was angry because I finally fought back. That afternoon, he followed me around the house, asking questions. Why was I hiding my laptop? Why had I gone to court? Why did I want to keep his mother away? I kept my answers short, calm, measured. When he realized he couldn't rattle me, he tried something else. He stood in the doorway with a smug look and said, "You're turning our son against his grandmother." "That's alienation, Emily. You could lose custody for that." I almost laughed. The man who helped record me in the shower was now lecturing me about parental rights. I pulled out the court order from my bag and handed it to him. His eyes ran over the text. Then, without warning, he ripped it in half and threw the pieces on the floor. "You think you can control this? You have no idea who you're dealing with." I said nothing, but inside, I was already steps ahead. I had copies of every document, every recording, every file. He could tear paper all he wanted. He couldn't destroy the truth. That night, I found Noah sitting on the bathroom floor, crying quietly. His words broke me. "Daddy said you might be taken away soon if you don't get better." I sat next to him and pulled him close, whispering over and over that none of it was true, that no one was taking me anywhere, that I would never leave him. But behind every word, I felt something crack inside me. They were poisoning him now, turning his fear into their weapon. That was the final line. I called Jenna first thing in the morning and told her what had happened. She listened, then said she'd add a new request to our case, an emergency motion to suspend Josh's contact with Noah until further notice. It was drastic, but necessary. The next few days crawled by. The tension in the house was unbearable. Josh stopped pretending. He came home early, went through drawers, tried to access my laptop. I saw him reflected in the window once, typing in my password wrong 3 times in a row. I let him. Let him think I was careless. Let him dig for clues that weren't there. The court decision came on Friday morning. The motion was approved. From that moment on, Josh wasn't allowed to be alone with Noah. I picked my son up from school, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear following me home. We watched a movie that night, something light and silly. He laughed so hard he spilled popcorn on the floor. The sound filled the house like a small piece of freedom. But the peace lasted less than a day. The next evening, Carol showed up again, standing at the edge of the sidewalk, screaming, "You ruined my son's life. You'll pay for this." I didn't even open the door this time. I just called the police. She was gone by the time they arrived, but they took another statement and promised to send patrols by the house. That night, I stood by the window and watched the empty street, feeling both exhausted and alive. I had spent years shrinking myself to keep that family calm. Now they were the ones unraveling. I knew this war was far from over, but something in me had shifted completely. I wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. I was preparing for their downfall. And when it came, it would be public. I started to plan. If they wanted to play games with hidden cameras, I'd give them a show they'd never forget. I would make them watch themselves lose. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was a message from Jenna. Court approved the restraining order against Carol. It's official. I exhaled, staring at the words. Another small victory. Another brick laid on the path toward peace. But peace never lasts long in a house built on manipulation. The day passed quietly. Josh didn't speak much. He moved through the house like a shadow, pretending to work from home. I could feel him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I checked the locks twice. Then I sat on the couch with my laptop, making backups of every document and video again. I created new folders, new passwords, new hidden storage spots. Each click felt like armor. I had no idea how close the next strike would be. The following morning, I found a folded note in Noah's backpack between his math book and a crumpled drawing. The handwriting was neat, in cursive, and unsigned. It said, "You need to leave. They're going to use the boy." My heart stopped. I read it again and again, the words blurring together. Someone inside that house knew more than I did. Someone who wasn't just watching, but warning. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the note while sunlight moved across the floor. I could hear Noah humming in the living room, completely unaware that his life was being treated like a pawn in a game I hadn't agreed to play. I started replaying every conversation, every glance from the last few days. Carol's strange words echoed in my head. Danny's been so quiet lately, like he knows something he shouldn't. At the time, I brushed it off as another jab. Now, it made perfect sense. They were twisting things, planting seeds, making him believe I was the problem. I walked to his room and sat next to him on the bed. My heart was pounding. "Honey, can I ask you something? Has anyone been saying strange things about me?" He hesitated. His eyes started toward the door like he was afraid someone might hear. Then he whispered, "Grandma said you want to take me away and never come back." The air left my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't even move. I hugged him tight, forcing my voice to stay calm. "That's not true, sweetheart. I would never do that. I love you more than anything." But inside, I was shaking. They were winning his trust, one quiet lie at a time. That night, I called Jenna again. My voice trembled as I told her what had happened. She didn't hesitate. "We're adding this to the motion," she said. "We'll request that both your husband and mother-in-law have their contact suspended until the next hearing. This is emotional manipulation of a minor." I thanked her and hung up. I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, staring at the glowing clock on the oven, listening to the steady hum of the refrigerator. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was past that. I was ready. 3 days later, the court approved the request. Josh and Carol were now officially restricted from speaking to Noah without supervision. I expected shouting, threats, chaos. But the silence that followed was worse. Josh barely spoke to me, but I could see it in his eyes, the quiet calculation, the cold anger of someone who'd just lost control. He started coming home earlier, pretending to help with chores, but really just hovering, watching, waiting. One night, I caught him going through my desk drawers. He froze when he saw me, then forced a smile. "Just looking for stamps," he said. I said nothing, just watched him until he walked out. The next day, I found a new phone charger plugged into the wall by the couch. It wasn't mine. I didn't touch it. I just took a photo and sent it to Jenna. She told me to leave it there. It could be evidence later. I was living in a silent standoff. Every move he made, I documented. Every word he said, I wrote down. Every night, I checked every room, every lock, every window. On Friday afternoon, an email arrived from Jenna. "The restraining orders are in effect. Enforcement is authorized. Stay calm. Keep your distance." That night, for the first time, I saw something in Josh's face that scared me. Not anger, but panic. The kind of fear people get when they know the game is slipping away. He sat at the dinner table staring at his plate, not eating, his jaw tight. Then suddenly, he said it. "You're destroying this family." I looked up from my food and met his eyes. No yelling, no shaking, just steady calm. "You destroyed it yourself." He stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "You think a few court papers are going to protect you? You have no idea how far we can go." I didn't respond. I just waited for him to leave the room. That night, Noah cried himself to sleep again. I stayed awake beside him, brushing his hair back, whispering that everything would be okay. When I finally stepped out into the hallway, I saw Josh sitting in the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, but one sentence carried through the air clearly. "She's going to regret this." He didn't see me standing there. I went back to my room, closed the door, and locked it. The next day, I told Jenna everything. She said it was time to take this fight to the next level, to gather every piece of proof and prepare for full exposure. I agreed. They wanted to play dirty. I was going to show the world exactly who they really were. The birthday dinner would be my stage. I planned it all. Invitations, decorations, catering, even music. I told everyone it was about reconciliation. A fresh start. They believed me. They always believed me. But this time, I wasn't coming to make peace. I was coming to end their game for good. The invitations went out on Monday morning. A cheerful message, a polite tone, nothing suspicious. "Dinner for my birthday this Saturday. Just family. I'd like a night of peace and honesty. No grudges, no tension. They all replied quickly. Every single one of them confirmed. Hypocrites. Smiling through messages while sharpening knives behind the screen. I rented a small restaurant room downtown, neutral ground, fancy enough to keep them on their best behavior. I told Jenna my plan in full detail. She didn't love it, but she understood why I needed it. You'll have one chance, she said. Make sure the right people see everything. I promised her I would. That week, I prepared like it was a mission. I organized every file, every photo, every recording. I printed transcripts of Carol's words to Noah, of Josh's threats, of every edited clip I'd found on that cursed computer. I labeled each one with dates and times. Then, I created a slideshow side-by-side footage. Their edited version next to the originals. The truth would speak for itself. On Wednesday, something strange happened. Josh got home early, carrying groceries and flowers like we were a happy couple again. He said he wanted to help with the dinner, to show the family we're united. I smiled, thanked him, and let him talk. Every word he said was a mask. He thought he could act his way out of this. He didn't realize the curtain was about to fall. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that note in Noah's backpack. The warning, they're going to use the boy. Who had sent it? Was someone still trying to protect me, or was it part of the game? Early Friday morning, a new message arrived. Don't trust anyone tomorrow. Not even the ones who smile. I didn't reply. I just screenshot it and sent it to Jenna. She called immediately. Stay alert. Don't go alone. I wasn't planning to. I hired a tech specialist, a young guy named Marcus, to handle the projector and the sound system. I told him to play the file when I gave the signal, no sooner, no later. He nodded without asking questions. Saturday came too soon. I wore simple clothes, nothing glamorous, nothing dramatic. Just black pants and a white blouse. My hands shook while I tied my hair back, but my reflection in the mirror looked calm. Controlled. When I arrived at the restaurant, everyone was already there. Carol, sitting upright with her perfect fake smile. Josh, standing beside her, pretending to be relaxed. His sister, nervous but quiet. Even his father, who rarely said anything, sat stiff at the end of the table. They greeted me with hugs, compliments, practiced warmth. Carol handed me flowers. I took them, thanked her, and smiled back. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might echo in the room. We sat down. Dinner began. For 20 long minutes, I played my part. I laughed when they laughed. I nodded when they spoke. Then, when dessert was served, I gave a small nod to Marcus. He dimmed the lights. The screen lit up. At first, the video looked innocent, me reading to Noah before bed, soft music in the background. Everyone smiled, thinking it was a sentimental montage. Then the sound changed. Carol's voice filled the room, recorded clearly. She'll destroy herself. We just need to give her a little push. The smiles froze. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Carol's face drained of color. The next clip played, the doctored videos beside the originals. One showed me screaming, but next to it, the unedited version revealed I was quietly crying, holding a letter from my late father. The contrast was undeniable. Gasps filled the room. Josh's sister covered her mouth. His father's hand trembled against the table. Carol slammed her palm down hard enough to rattle the glasses. You set this up, she shouted. Before I could answer, her husband stood. His voice was sharp, tired. You set it up, Carol. Not her. I bought the first camera, but I never agreed to using the boy. The room fell into chaos. Carol's mouth opened, but no sound came. Her eyes started around, searching for someone to defend her, but no one moved. Josh jumped to his feet and ran toward the tech booth, shouting at Marcus to stop the video. Marcus looked at me. I gave the signal. Play the next one. The screen flickered again, showing Josh sitting in his office, talking to someone on speakerphone. His voice came out clear and steady. I'll push her until she loses custody. Then we'll get the house and the kid. Easy win. A few relatives gasped out loud. One woman, Josh's aunt, stood up and walked straight out, shaking her head. I didn't move. I just sat there, watching the empire they'd built around lies crumble in real time. When the last clip ended, the lights came back on. The room was silent except for heavy breathing and the sound of someone sobbing softly. Carol sat frozen, staring at the table. Her husband stepped away from her. Josh just stared at me, his face pale, his mouth tight. "You ruined everything," he whispered. I met his eyes. "No, I just showed them what you really are." I stood, smoothed my blouse, and turned toward the door. My knees were shaking, but I kept walking. The moment I stepped outside, the cold night air hit me like a release. My phone buzzed before I even reached the car. A new email. A notification from the court system. Temporary full custody granted. No contact order approved. Effective immediately. My hands trembled as I read the words. I had won. Not out of vengeance, but survival. Still, as I slid into the driver's seat, a thought lingered, one that tightened my chest. Winning didn't mean I was safe. I didn't know how right I was until I got home. I turned on the light and saw a white envelope sitting on the coffee table. No name, no address. Just one thing inside, a photo of me asleep in bed. On the back, handwritten in neat ink, were the words, "You still don't know what I'm capable of." My breath caught in my throat. The sheets in the picture were the same as last night's. My hair, the book beside me, it was all too recent. Someone had been inside my house again. Even after all the orders, after all the exposure, after everything, I was still being watched. And this time, they were closer than ever. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the couch with every light in the house turned on, the photo still on the coffee table like a curse. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept staring at that image of me asleep, trying to figure out how someone could have been inside without waking me. Every lock was intact. Every window sealed. The security system had shown no alerts. But they had been here. Around 3 in the morning, I called Jenna. My voice cracked when she answered. I told her everything, the photo, the handwriting, the fear crawling up my spine. She didn't hesitate. "Bring it to the police first thing in the morning. Don't touch it again. Put it in a plastic bag." I did exactly that. By 8 a.m., 2 officers stood in my living room taking photos of the envelope. They asked the same questions over and over. Had I noticed anyone around the house? Did I have enemies? Could it have been a prank? I laughed bitterly. A prank doesn't sneak into your bedroom while you're sleeping. They nodded, sympathetic but cautious. They promised to open a case for trespassing and harassment. I watched them drive away and felt smaller than I'd felt in months. I locked the door and slid down against it. Noah was still asleep upstairs. I listened to his quiet breathing through the baby monitor I'd started using again. My son's peaceful sighs were the only thing keeping me grounded. But the fear didn't fade. It changed shape. I started jumping at every sound, the fridge humming, the pipes creaking, the dog next door barking. Every shadow on the wall looked like someone standing there. I hadn't felt this trapped since the first day I saw those hidden cameras. I refused to live like prey again. I called a security company and spent the rest of the day installing a new system, high-definition cameras inside and out, motion sensors, a smart alarm connected to a 24-hour response center. That night, I slept with my phone in my hand. 2 days later, the police called. They couldn't find fingerprints on the photo. Whoever left it had worn gloves. The paper was generic, the ink common. A dead end. Jenna wasn't surprised. She'd seen this before, harassment that stays just inside the line of the law. She filed a new motion anyway. A full perimeter restriction order. The judge approved it within 48 hours. Anyone connected to Josh or Carol who came within 200 feet of me or Noah would be electronically tracked and reported. Still, I didn't relax. Because this wasn't just about distance. It was about control. About reminding me I'd never really be safe. The attacks moved online next. Josh started posting old pictures of himself with Noah, writing captions like "Fathers deserve love too," and "Some people use courts to hide the truth." The comments filled with sympathy from people who didn't know the story. I got tagged in posts calling me cruel, unstable, manipulative. For a while, it broke me all over again. Then something inside me hardened. I made a new anonymous account and began uploading the truth. One video at a time. No commentary, no editing, just raw footage. Carol's words to Noah. The recordings of their conversations. The court documents. At first, barely anyone noticed. 10 views. Then 100. Then 1,000. Within a week, my story went viral. News outlets picked it up. Woman uncovers hidden cameras planted by in-laws. Comments poured in. Strangers sent messages saying they'd been through the same thing, that my story gave them courage to fight back. For the first time, I wasn't the one hiding. They were. The exposure cut deeper than any legal order could. Josh's firm suspended him pending investigation. Carol vanished from social media. Their family's reputation collapsed overnight. But with attention came danger. One quiet night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. The voice was low, distorted, mechanical. You're exposing too much. And we're not the only ones watching now. The line went dead. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen. It wasn't Josh or Carol. The tone was colder, detached, almost professional. Someone else was involved, someone who didn't want the truth spreading any further. I sent the number to Jenna. She traced it. Disposable burner phone. No record. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering just how deep this web really went. A few days later, one of my videos reached over 100,000 views. A woman messaged me from another state. She said she'd seen the video of Josh talking to his lawyer, planning to take my son and the house. Her message said, "He did the same thing to me years ago." But no one believed me. My blood went cold. We spoke on a video call. She told me everything, how she'd dated Josh before me, how he'd recorded her too, twisted her words, tried to make her look unstable to gain control. When she tried to fight back, one of his colleagues at the law firm helped him bury the evidence. I asked for the man's name. She told me. It was his partner at the firm, the same man who handled our family finances, who had co-signed our mortgage, who had advised Josh through the entire divorce. Suddenly, everything fit. This wasn't just a toxic family. It was a network of manipulation. A system that had protected men like Josh for years. I sent everything to Jenna, messages, screenshots, the woman's testimony. She dug deeper. The partner's name appeared on multiple documents tied to Josh's accounts, including transfers made before our court hearing. I realized what this really was. They weren't trying to just take my son. They were protecting their money, their image, their power. Jenna's voice on the phone was calm but electric. "We're not filing another motion. We're filing a criminal case." That was the moment I stopped being afraid. I had been the target, the victim, the silent one. Not anymore. I was going to burn their whole foundation down, piece by piece, until there was nothing left for them to hide behind. And the world would be watching. When the police raided Megan's apartment, it was over. They found cameras, notes, and photos, everything. She was arrested. The partner, too. Josh was charged as an accomplice. After months of hearings, the truth finally stood in daylight. The judge granted me full custody of Noah. Carol got a restraining order. The firm fired Josh, the partner lost his license, and the story made headlines. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. We moved to a small house on a quiet street. No cameras, no whispers. Noah started laughing again. Sometimes I'd catch him playing in the yard, sunlight on his face, and I'd think, this is what freedom looks like. Then, one evening, a small envelope appeared on my doorstep. Inside was a Polaroid of my backyard taken from the fence line. On the back, 3 words, "Long memory stay." I handed it straight to the police. They said it was likely the last scare, a leftover ghost of the old game. But I knew better. People like them don't disappear. They just move farther into the dark. Still, I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd built walls they couldn't cross. I taught Noah to lock doors, to trust his instincts, to always tell the truth. Sometimes revenge isn't destruction, it's endurance. It's surviving them. And that's exactly what I did. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below and don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.